Hello, I'm Dr. Jeff Gibbon.
And I am Dr. Valerie Delatorre.
Welcome to this brief video where we will introduce the topic of ethics and building a consistent Christian ethic. Worldview is key to how we make ethical decisions.
This is important for this topic in our class, for completing this assignment, for future discussions about ethics in your major, and ultimately for your future career. Within worldview, how do we make ethical decisions?
As we look at ethical decision making, it is helpful to understand what it is not. That is, what it is not about is as important as understanding what it is about. It is not necessarily about the legal system. There may have been unjust laws or unjust societies. Laws can be immoral and unethical too. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
And it is not about how you were raised. If you draw your ethics from how you are raised, it usually means you have a great family foundation. I am glad you had a great upbringing. Many have been raised with an unjust ethic, however. That does not make it okay.
This is not about choosing to be ethical or unethical. I hope you always choose to be ethical. We are focused on what is ethical. How do you define what is morally good? Our main focus here is building our ethic. How do we determine what is the morally good action to take in a particular situation? How do we do that?
We begin with the base of the foundation, a core worldview belief. Worldview beliefs are foundational to ethical decision making. Ethical decision making aligns with our core worldview beliefs. Unethical decisions breach our core worldview beliefs. This means that debates about what is ethical can be about different core worldview beliefs. The three worldview families, atheism, theism, and pantheism, each have different core worldview beliefs.
Why does ethical decision-making matter? There are tons of examples, but consider a healthcare provider who believes that humans are just high-functioning animals. Maybe I do not want that person being in charge of my healthcare. Or an employee who thinks that it's okay to steal just because the company can afford it. Maybe that's not a good employee to have, regardless of their degree.
So let's build the Christian ethic. From any worldview, ethical decision-making requires a core worldview belief. Often there will be more than one core worldview belief involved in the ethics of that particular situation. Let's focus on which core worldview belief has the deepest impact on the ethics of a situation.
Since ultimate reality is the base of all the other core worldview beliefs, let's focus on the others. The nature of the universe, nature of humanity, nature of knowledge, ethics, and human purpose. We have talked about each of these throughout the course. With the case you are considering, which core worldview belief is foundational?
Our next step is to look at clarifying evidence, the pillars shown in our graphic.
Since this is the Christian worldview, we would look for biblical passages that clarify how this is applied in the case we are considering, and importantly, the action that should be taken. Since the Christian worldview also affirms other kinds of evidence, we would look at evidence from academic sources too. This could include statistics, scientific and historical evidence, and so forth.
A Christian ethic requires critical thinking for ethical decision-making. We are going to rationally and logically connect the dots and think through the decisions while aligning with one's worldview. We should see some logical thinking in that decision.
Finally, we also want to understand and address the unintentional consequences, the roof in our graphic. Doing the right thing is rarely doing the easy thing. Let's think through the unintentional consequences. Make a list. Next, how can we address those unintentional consequences? How can we overcome them? How can we help? What can we do to resolve the unintentional consequences? This is a very important and often forgotten step in building our ethic.
Let's look at a couple of easy examples. They are easy to know what is right or wrong, but it will help us to show how to build the ethic.
In our first example, a healthcare provider has a patient who is a 68-year-old man. The patient has the beginning of prostate cancer. His current condition is serious, but he could overcome. With care, he could live much longer, and he can afford the care. However, a 68-year-old man getting better isn't going to make the medical journals, or it's not even going to make the hospital newsletter. If the provider gave minimal care to this older man and extra care to a patient who is young, it could have potential of bolstering his career. It may also be more notable in the coming year-end review. What should he do?
The core worldview foundation is the nature of humanity. Human value that is based on all human beings created in the image of God. Regarding the evidence, here we would want to focus on biblical passages and academic evidences on the value of all human life, both young and old. As we think about unintentional consequences, what about the younger patient? How can we make sure that both patients receive the care they need? How can we address these issues? What is the final decision? The healthcare provider decides to give care based on the patient's healthcare needs and all human beings being valuable rather than on age or appearance alone. In our next example, a young man has been arrested. A felony charge has been given, and now you are a young lawyer who has been given the case to prosecute. When you meet with a young man, it becomes very apparent that his attitude, demeanor, and lack of respect will get him in serious trouble sooner or later. When you look in his file and the evidence against this young man, you notice that there is some evidence against him and some evidence that could be a potential alibi. He may not have even been there when the crime happened. Then you notice that there is a technical issue with the potential alibi. It was obtained incorrectly. You could have this alibi suppressed so the jury never hears it. Prosecutors are evaluated on how many people are convicted of a crime. Your prosecution rate is too low. You need a conviction. You look at the young man and think, he's going to end up in jail soon enough. He very well could have done it. The evidence for his alibi is not for certain. Should you suppress the evidence?
For our foundation, we could go a couple different directions here. We could highlight human nature, that all humans are created in the image of God, yet fall into a sinful nature. However, the bigger key here is ethics. Morality is objective and absolute. Regarding evidence, for your clarifying evidence, you would seek biblical passages that talk about impartiality, especially in court cases. You could also look at some academic sources about wrongful conviction. There are unintentional consequences here as well that we would want to consider. Technical evidence gathering is important and is usually focused on the rights of everyone involved. How can this young prosecutor help to ensure that technical evidence gathering is done more consistently? How can this young prosecutor ensure that everyone's rights are honored? For our final decision, what is the right thing? To treat this young man fairly and with dignity. A fair trial with a potential alibi will have a much better chance for a right conclusion.
Think about the steps we have walked through in this video and build a Christian ethical response to the situation. Thank you for your time.